This is the Padua Podcast Network. It's not like you go and you eat an extra 4 ounces of chicken a day and it's gonna get you high all the time. Running a Fever episode 151, Dopamine, the natural fun drug. Welcome to Running Fever. I'm Michael Davis, loving life out here in a beautiful Lake Fayetteville. I don't know what it's, maybe about 50 degrees. Interesting, last week I was in Mount Nebo State Park, which is another 1,500 feet in altitude higher than where we are now. Well, actually it's probably that above sea level, so I'm maybe a little higher than sea level here. But it said that the temperature is always 10 degrees higher up there. Not sure about that, but then I looked at the phone this morning. I think it was in the 60s when I first looked at it. But my phone was still set on Mount Nebo, although it was Dardanelle, which is not necessarily on top of the mountain. So it was actually cooler here, registered in the 40s. And I wasn't sure whether I should wear something long sleeve or not. I want to be comfortable, but sometimes it's hard to tell. So it was in the 40s, a little cooler, so not predicted to get above 70 today. So I put the long sleeve shirt on, and I'm doing okay so far. This is going to be the second in my 5-part series on the details of brain chemicals that I originally discussed in episode 139. There's an excellent speech by Simon Sinek. He was given as a TED Talk, and he's done it, I think, other times as well. That's linked in the show notes. You can get to runningfever.com/151. runningfever.com/151 for the show notes for this episode. And you'll see a link there to Simon Sinek's speech and all the other references that I use in the show today. But just to recap, this drug dopamine is, it comes from accomplishment. So it's checking things off the list. It helps us to get things done, and that's the purpose of it. So this is why we need to write down our goals so we can check them off that list. When we see these, it's a kind of visually activated. So when we see them, it's like seeing an apple on a tree. The closer we get to the apple, the more dopamine is released.
Good morning.
Morning. By the way, it's a lovely Sunday morning here at the park, and I'm hoping to complete the first 5-point screw 5 miles complete circuit in quite a while, maybe a couple months actually. So yeah, it visually stimulated, and this is why we have, for example, corporate vision statements. We have to be able to visualize, see our goals, and that's what triggers this dopamine release. Imagine the I have a dream speech. Very visually descriptive, and that's very effective. Highly addictive. Alcohol addiction, gambling addiction, our cell phones. You get a dopamine hit when you look at that text message or Facebook post. So, no question here in the mind of Simon Sinek anyway. that this is an addictive substance. Although, if you recall from the last episode, there were at least 2 sources of mine that said that endorphins were not addictive, despite the fact that it's listed in the DSM-4 as being a disorder, exercise addiction. So all of these chemicals that I've been talking about are neurotransmitters. And I've described it as being like the interstate highway system, taking supplies. The neurotransmitters would be the trucks taking the supplies. In the nervous system, this role is played by the neurotransmitters like dopamine. Unlike trucks, however, these nervous system neurotransmitter signals travel at over 300 miles an hour. Now, unlike endorphins, dopamine is far more mysterious, and how it works in the body is more complex and thus less understood. And it's very active in a lot of different things. It's heavily involved in the reward systems that we mentioned earlier, of course, but also important in motor functions. Drugs that stimulate production of dopamine have been used in treatment of Parkinson's disease. It also affects sexual arousal, hallucination, and our ability to pay attention. Now, some of these drugs that are hormones that are, coursing through our veins are, they're powerful drugs. They're powerful influences on our bodies. So this is why I think it's important and why I wanted to really go into depth on some of these. Another thing is, the effects vary according to the individual, which is also true of narcotics. People have different opiate receptors. It's like an addict may be more or less sensitive to that and thus more prone to addiction than other people. Each person's dopamine receptors are different. Like endorphins, dopamine can be increased by things we control. And some of them are quite healthy. For example, and this is here's how you get the drug section of the show. Number 1, eating lots of protein. Never would have thought that, but that's true. Number 2, studies show that. I want to just caveats. This all, it's not like you go and you eat an extra 4 ounces of chicken a day and it's gonna get you high all the time. Some of these have been shown in studies, and in studies, you have to pay attention to the details. Okay, I do have some of these studies in the show notes, runningfever.com/151. Number 2, eating less saturated fat. As we know from my episode on fats, that is generally a good thing. Number 3, taking probiotics. Believe it or not, some bacteria can produce dopamine in the body. Number 4, eating velvet beans. Of course, in addition to providing a lot of protein, it contains L-Dopa, which is used as a dopamine drug in treatment of Parkinson's disease. That's the drug they use, L-Dopa. Number 5, exercise often. What I'm doing today, maybe what you're doing as you're listening right now. In one 6-month study, doing 1 hour of yoga 6 times per week increased dopamine levels. Number 6, get plenty of sleep. One of the things I've been doing is at the recommendation of one of the longevity experts. I can't I can't remember if it was Dr. Roizen or Dan Buettner. One of those guys said sleep at a 65-degree temperature, and I've been doing that. One of the things that does is help you get more sleep. And also at the recommendation of my doctor, I've been taking L-arginine at night, which is a supplement amino acid that can help with better quality sleep. Number 7, listen to music. I mean, these are just good things. Number 8, meditate. Number 9, get enough sunlight. I'm also doing this today, maybe getting too much, I don't know. I understand the most dangerous time for sunlight, at least in most latitudes, is between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. The sun is closest to us. So be careful of that. And just don't overexpose yourself. But get enough sunlight. And there are supplements you can take. Number 10, iron, niacin, folate, B6. None of these should be entered into lightly. You shouldn't just go out and start taking lots of iron. That can be dangerous. Now, several of the things, these just sound like fun things to do. And that's why I call it the fun drug. It's the fun brain chemical. Of course, dopamine is basically the fun chemical. So when we're enjoying these things, that's the physical process that's making them seem fun to us. And you thought we were so intellectual. Not necessarily the case. Well, I have learned a lot in doing these episodes, and we've got 3 more of these brain chemical episodes coming, and I hope you're enjoying them too, because, and I want to give the standard caveat here. I've been giving out a lot of caveats in this series because of how impactful these chemicals can be on us. My goal with these shows is not to say go out and do everything you can to increase these chemicals in your body, but to help us understand how our bodies work, and by doing so, helping us to get the data that we need to live a healthier, happier, more active life right up to the very end. That's what running fever is all about. And if you got the fever, you know that. So keep the fever. If you don't have it, go catch it. And we'll talk to you next time on Running a Fever.